All right, so we've had a night to sleep on this trade. We've heard from Blackhawks GM Kyle Davidson. We've heard from Bowen Byram, and I've been able to further gather my thoughts, which aren't too different from my initial reaction that I posted here on YouTube last night. I also had some more thoughts over on my Twitter at Blackhawks Focus, kind of trying to put things together last night. It was kind of crazy. It was so many, my mind was racing. It was a really shocking deal, especially to see that number 4 pick involved. But I have become a little bit more confident in kind of what I was saying last night. I think I've been able to add a few different outlooks and opinions as well. So I want to break it down and further break down this trade here in this video now that I've had a lot more time to think about it and like I said, gather some of my thoughts. I still do think that the Blackhawks acquiring Bowen Byram and Jordan Greenway in exchange for the number 4 pick, the number 45 pick, and Louis Crevier is an overpay from the Blackhawks on a trade value perspective. I still really don't like including Louis Crevier in the deal. I've envisioned him throughout this whole past season. I shouldn't say always, because he really blossomed this past year, but I've envisioned him since this breakout year as a long-term third pair guy. So it does kind of stink to see him go. I think he's going to be really good in Buffalo, and there, like I said last night, there would be a lot of other players that I would have included in this trade before I included Louis Crevier. But while I definitely think from a trade value perspective, the Sabres definitely come away with the better haul, I don't hate this deal from the Blackhawks perspective, and I didn't last night either. I never did really at any point, even while I was kind of in the state of shock seeing what the return ended up being and seeing all of the Blackhawks fans on Twitter just freaking out. I like the idea of making a trade where you're getting the better player and getting a player that, quite frankly, fills a huge need for the Blackhawks long term, and that is an elite left shot defenseman, a number 1 pair, top pair guy. I feel very confident that Byram will be that. I know some people are saying he's just a good second pair guy, or at least I've seen some people say that. I think he's going to be really good given an expanded opportunity. I was able to earlier today dive into a little bit more Bowen Byram film from this past playoffs. I was able to watch him a little more specifically, and it just gets me even more excited about the player that he can be in a top pair number 1 type of role that he will get with the Blackhawks. His skating is really good. His offensive instincts are really, really good. There were so many subtle plays that he made, whether that was especially off the rush and in the O zone, even in the D zone. There's a lot of subtle skill plays that he makes. His offensive instincts, how to jump in the rush, when to jump in the rush, they're really good when to activate on the blue line. He has all the makings of an elite offensive defenseman given a number 1 role. That's what he's going to get with the Blackhawks. That's everything that Kyle Davidson has indicated is that he is going to be the number 1 for the Hawks starting next season and probably for the long term. Can't even say that I'm being biased, being super excited about Byram either, because in my mock trades article that I posted last weekend, I said specifically that Byram is a player that fits the Blackhawks really well. I've been really kind of excited about the opportunity of potentially acquiring him. Quite frankly, I didn't think it was going to happen because I didn't think the Blackhawks had the assets, or at least were willing to give up the assets to get Byram, but they moved that number 4 pick, and I'm really even more excited now about the player that they are bringing in here in Bowen Byram. He doesn't have an extension yet because he can't sign one until July 1st, but everything sounds like he will be signing long-term with the Blackhawks. He said earlier today that he plans on being in Chicago for a long time. Kyle Davidson kind of reaffirmed that they will be working on a long-term deal with him after free agency begins. So I think everything, there shouldn't be any worries there. Now, I do think some people are not going to like the big money that he's going to get. It's going to be over $10 million. I saw a report, I mentioned this last night, that it could be as much as like $12.5 million on a long-term deal, and it is quite a lot of money, but I don't think it's going to age terribly for a number 1 defenseman if Byram is that. Okay, so the Blackhawks gave up the number 4 pick in this deal, and I feel more confident saying it now than I did last night, even though I did say it last night, that I would rather have Bowen Byram than the number 4 pick this year. From a trade value wise, when you're moving the number 4 pick, I think you could have got a little more in return, especially considering the Hawks had to add on a 2nd round pick and Louis Crevier. I think they could have got a little bit more value in return, but in terms of would I rather have Carson Carls or Chase Reed or Bowen Byram, I would rather bet on Byram that he's that top pair defenseman than one of Carls or Reed. I mean, I had Carls 8th on my Blackhawks draft board. I had Reed 5th. So I'm not super high on any of them. I could see Chase Reed especially having a super high ceiling where he could be a number 1D, but that's a big question mark. He's not going to be ready for the NHL in probably, at least a year, maybe even 2, and then he's got to build up to where he can actually get to a number 1D, which we've seen with Sam Rinzel, we've seen with Artem Levchinov. Doesn't just happen automatically. So honestly, I don't mind moving the number 4 pick in this trade. Again, I said it last night, and I'm sticking with it. I am perfectly fine moving off this pick in the trade. I think what I really don't like about the move is moving on from Louis Crevier, but I'm trying to kind of detach myself from how much I like Louis Crevier and look at it a little more realistically. He is coming off a breakout season. His value's not really going to get any higher than it is right now. He was probably the Blackhawks' best, most consistent defender last year. He was good offensively. I think he led Blackhawks defensemen in goals last season. He was playing big minutes on the penalty kill. Realistically, you are selling high on a guy that you didn't even picture and that no one pictured as a long-term piece before this season. At most, we all kind of thought he would be a 7th defenseman. So for him to come in, have a great year, and now the Blackhawks are moving him out, selling high on him, including him in this trade, I guess I can live with it, even though it does hurt and it does make this even better value for the Sabres. One thing I am kind of changing my stance on that I did say last night was that I would rather trade Sam Rinzel than Louis Crevier in a trade, even though partially because Rinzel would have more value than Crevier would. I'm kind of taking that back now that I've thought about that. Crevier is, kind of you're selling high on him. Rinzel, you're not. Not that I was wanting to shop or trade any of Rinzel or Crevier, but I would change my stance in the fact that I would rather trade Crevier than I would Rinzel, even though I didn't really want either to move. So while I wish the Blackhawks could have gotten a little more trade value in a return like that number 20 pick that Buffalo has, I'm not super upset with this. The Blackhawks needed to make some sort of splash. The biggest thing is they need to be better next year so that they can attract some of these forwards that want out. Like, what if Connor McDavid wants out of Edmonton next year? What if Austin Matthews or William Nylander wants out of Toronto? There's so many or players that no one's even thinking about. What if they want out next year? The Blackhawks have to be a better team so that they're actually an attractive destination for some of these top players to come. The Hawks kept all their 2027 draft picks. That's 3 first-round picks. In next year's draft, they kept all of those, so they have plenty of ammunition to make a future deal for a forward. But realistically, if any top forward is going to want to come to Chicago and extend long-term, they have to show progress next year, and Bowen Byram is going to help them be a better team next year. It doesn't, I guess, directly help Connor Bedard in terms of getting him a top-line winger, but Bedard will benefit from adding Bowen Byram. The report is that he was really excited about this trade, and he should be, because Byram, provides the power play quarterback that the Blackhawks need on that top power play unit. Rinzel or Levchinov, and I said this throughout the year, I was not impressed with them at the power play quarterback position, and I didn't really envision any of them being the QB long term. So now that you have Byram up there on that top power play, that's going to elevate Connor Bedard, and just having a high-end offensive defenseman is going to help all the forwards out a lot more, especially someone like Connor Bedard. So even though this isn't necessarily filling in that winger, that long-term winger next to Bedard, this is going to help him be a more productive and better hockey player, and it's going to elevate Connor Bedard. So now that I've slept on this trade, I feel pretty confident saying that I'd like it for the Blackhawks. It is definitely an overpay from a trade value perspective, but that was going to have to happen if you want to bring in a real legit player like Bowen Byram is. He is going to be a top pair guy, and I think he can be a really good top pair guy for the Blackhawks. He's going to help also bring along Sam Rinzel and Artem Levchinov on the right side. He's just a really good player that you were going to have to overpay for if you wanted to acquire. Those are my thoughts here on this trade. I'll probably develop new thoughts moving forward here as we get another day or two once that extension kicks in, once we see Byram in camp, once we see Byram play on the Blackhawks. But I am willing to be on record saying that I do like this trade from the Blackhawks. I do also think that they could have gotten a little more in the trade, or that they overpaid a little bit to make it happen. But at the end of the day, you're adding Byram and Jordan Greenway, who will be a valuable bottom sixer. I know people are kind of clowning the Blackhawks for not getting a sweetener to take on Greenway. Greenway is going to be a player that the Blackhawks that he's going to be a positive asset for the Blackhawks, not a negative one. So I don't think you needed to attach a sweetener or bring in a sweetener just to take him on. I actually proposed in my 10 mock trades video that I just referenced earlier when we were talking about Byram. I also had a trade for Greenway where the Blackhawks were just getting him for future considerations, because I think he is a positive asset for the Hawks and they should want to acquire someone like Greenway. So between the Blackhawks getting those two players, while it definitely is an overpay, I do like the trade. This does make the Blackhawks better next year, and Byram is going to be a long-term piece, and he can be an elite long-term piece, and he's someone I'm really excited about, and I really am excited about this Blackhawks D-corps, because if you have even just one of Levchinov or Rinzel really hit and be a top pair defenseman, and even if the other one's just a top 4 guy, your D-corps now has Byram, Levchinov, Rinzel, Kaiser, Vlasic. You have an open spot on the right side. You could maybe fill that with a veteran stopgap option like a Jacob Trouba or Radko Gudas. Then you can solve that long term in a different way. Maybe that's a future trade or something, because the Blackhawks still have plenty of assets. Like, people are acting like the Blackhawks are going all in on trading all their assets to get Bowen Byram, and they're never going to be able to get a forward. That's just not true. They have 3 first-round draft picks next year. Brady Tkachuk just went for 3 first-round picks, and I know his situation was a little bit unique, but once Chicago becomes an attractive destination, which they should be, they will be a lot more attractive next year to good players than they are right now. You can make a deal happen because you will have assets to make something happen. So while Blackhawks fans may get upset because I don't agree with the online opinions that this is the worst trade of the 2020s and the Blackhawks got fleeced and Kyle Davidson should be fired right now, I want to be on record, and I'm willing to be on record that I do like this trade from the Blackhawks perspective. That's kind of what I was saying last night. At least I was trying to hint at that, but to be honest, I just feel a lot more confident saying it right now. And the last thing I'll mention is that I'm interested to see if the Blackhawks move back into the first round. Wyatt Cullen was a player I had ranked 4th on my Blackhawks draft board, but he's projected to go 10 to 14. Now, I could totally see him going top 10. I mean, I had him 4th on my draft board, but if he's on the board at 12 or 13 and you have a team and you have teams like the Devils, like the Islanders that are trying to compete right now, I would at least try to see what those teams could want to move out of that pick. And for the Blackhawks, if you could get a guy like Colin or some other high upside forward, you could potentially have someone that is a top 6 piece, and you could still be picking a really good player in the first round. So I wonder if that's something the Blackhawks will consider. That's a lot more hypothetical. I did want to just throw that out there. I'll be sure to cover that if that were to happen, and I'll cover any news that happens here over the next few days over on my Twitter at Blackhawks Focus. Anything big happens, I'll have a video out here on YouTube, so make sure to subscribe and stay tuned. Check out my initial reaction to the trade if you didn't already, even though I think a lot of my thoughts are pretty similar. But thank you for watching this one, and I'm just going to leave it there.